Hello, everyone. Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers here. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on for our pilgrimage this fall. Father Thomas Reagan, one of the Fathers of Mercy, and myself will be leading a pilgrimage in the footsteps of St. Paul to Greece from October 20th to the 31st, with an extension trip to Rome, Italy from October 31st to November 3rd. Now, many people have been asking, well, what's going on with the COVID-19 virus? So the latest information we have is that both Greece and Italy only require a negative COVID test for entry, specifically a negative PRC test within 72 hours of traveling. Again, they require a negative or a clean PRC COVID test 72 hours before travel. That's great news. I'm going to include a link below so that you can get that information and see it for yourself. Not only is this pilgrimage going to be transformative, it's going to bring you to a deeper understanding of our Catholic faith and a deeper intimacy with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm excited to share this opportunity with you. So for more information, all you have to do is go to the website, deaconharold.com, and just go on the pilgrimage link. And when you go there, you just have to scroll down. I'll show you that right now. Just scroll down to the flyers here, click on the Greece pilgrimage, and you will have all the information here, the dates, what's included on the trip, all the specifics. Here are the costs for the pilgrimage and all the specifics that you need to know in order to have an amazing experience with us in Greece and in Italy. So I just want to give you that quick update. More information, just go to deaconharold.com under pilgrimages. Take care, my friends, and may God bless you greatly.
Welcome to Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar, where Deacon Harold and guests explore our Catholic faith through passionate discussion. Get ready as Deacon Harold and his diverse guests bring an array of knowledge and life to Catholic teaching. You are watching Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar.
Hello, and welcome to Walk by Faith Wednesday webinars with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. Glad to be with you as always. And again, it's hot again this week here in Oregon. I hope you guys are keeping cool wherever you are. And I'm really excited again this week. I'm excited every week for the Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar. But we're bringing back a wonderful guest that we had on a while ago to share some more wonderful wisdom about the beauty and truth of our Catholic faith, especially when it comes to relationships. And so I'm going to welcome back Hannah Ballo. And today we're going to talk about how people, especially young people, are kind of at a loss about their true identity in this culture today, right? I mean, there's no question we're going through an identity crisis, particularly around gender identity, right, in our culture today. Because Hannah's going to talk about how the culture's kind of lost this sense of identity because we've lost the ideal of the understanding of human anthropology. So not anthropology digging for bones, it's archaeology, right? But anthropology is the nature of the human person, who we are, what it means to be made in God's image and likeness. And there's so much confusion right now about what it means to be a human person. And we see the ill effects of this in transgenderism, confusion over what marriage is, and the purpose and meaning of human sexuality. And so Hannah's going to break this all open for us, rooting it again in the beautiful scripture, Genesis 1:27, made in the image and likeness of God, and in the teachings of the church. And so with that, Hannah, welcome back to Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar. So good to have you on again.
Thank you so much, Deacon Harold. It's an honor to be back.
Well, great. Well, this is a very important topic for all Catholics, obviously, particularly for young Catholics today, for young adults, and for high schoolers for that matter. And quite frankly, even for grade school kids. I mean, the statistics are horrifying. when you see the first exposure to pornography is somewhere around 11 years old. And it's dropped so far in age, the lower age group, because of the proliferation of technology and cell phones and access to all kinds of information that's just widely available to our young people now. And so I think this is a very important topic to discuss, so we can properly understand who we are in God, right? And first, one of my favorite verses in all the scriptures, 1 John 4:16, God is love. And he who lives in love lives in God, and God lives in him. So help us to break this open.
Yeah. So as you were speaking, I just kind of thought about an old movie. I'm sure most have probably seen it at one point or another, The Incredibles. So there is a really telling line in the movie, The Incredibles, and it's from the villain named Syndrome. So he's fighting Mr. Incredible, the main hero, and there comes a point where Syndrome is trying to tell his purpose of why he is a villain, and it's basically to make everybody super. Everyone can be a superhero if they all get powers. And he says a line that goes, if everyone is super, then no one will be. And I think that this is a really good analogy, because if the human body and human life and what it means to be a human person can mean anything, it can mean whatever you want it to mean, then it really means nothing. And this is the struggle that the postmodern world is experiencing. Rather than Christianity being this oppressor, it was centuries of having Christendom in history that made us be able to understand and never question on such a large scale what it means to be a human person. So I think the prime question is to be able to get that right, this vision of what it means to be a human person, that it's not just whatever we decide it to be, because that's when people are lost. That's when people face despair. That's when people reject Christ and religion without even realizing that the key that they are so desperately searching for, this key to understanding identity, is found in Christ, and that this sort of like anti-Christ system that we're in, that's trying to make it out to be this fluid concept of being a person, is really what takes away from our dignity and takes away from this idea of having intrinsic value.
No, I totally agree with you. And, one thing that COVID has brought out, some of the statistics that I've seen, is that so many young people, young adults in particular, are suffering from anxiety and depression. This is supposed to be, the kind of when you're getting yourself started and motivated, and you're maybe you're finishing college and you're starting out on your own. It's supposed to be an exciting time. Yeah, a little bit of a challenging time, maybe a little scary, but it's also a very exciting time. So what do you think? And given the nature of the human person, what are the biggest sources of anxiety for our young adults today, you think?
Yeah, well, the reason I do what I do, the reason why I speak on this, is because I feel the same anxieties to one degree or another at times, even with faith, even with Christ, just some of the growing pangs of becoming an adult and taking on more responsibilities as I move to the next chapter of life. But I know that it is just so much more difficult if you're trying to navigate through life and you don't have these tools, if you don't have this faith perspective. It's just not enough to be told, jump through a certain amount of hoops and then you will get a good job. Like, we're searching for more meaning and purpose in life than just getting a good job or just having those good grades that you could get into the college of your choice. So I think there are a few different tiers of some of the most profound anxieties that young adults and teens experience. And I see these as very relational. So people wondering if they're ever going to, like, where they're going to land in life. Are they going to have like love, family, connection? This also extends to a fear of community or lack thereof, not ever feeling like they truly belong in one place or another. and especially the distrust of institutions that young adults tend to have. It's even more isolating. And finally, like personal, there is personal fears over what impact I can actually make. Most kids grow up with this assurance that, I'm special and I'm going someplace, but then when you're no longer kind of the big fish in your little pond, you enter into the college years or you enter into the workforce, and it can feel completely overwhelming. You realize your smallness in the big story of life. So if there isn't a greater assurance, if there isn't the mystical body of Christ and this incredible role that no one else can replace, then there isn't this overarching sense of a projection of where my life is going or what impact it's going to make. And I know that this was just even heightened so much while people were stuck in a very small bubble during COVID, stuck alone in apartments, and in their like living situation and not a lot of interaction with other people, and all these anxieties have been heightened. But I do think that the great blessing in all that is that people are searching now. They really don't want to go back to that, don't want to go back to that feeling of complete isolation. So there is more openness and there is a desire to learn and to know, like, what else could there be for my life?
Yeah, that's a great point. And along those lines, one thing that we've started to see now is as states begin to relax restrictions due to the coronavirus pandemic, is that people are starting to come back to church. We're seeing more dioceses now removing the dispensation, so people are coming. Well, at least not in huge numbers so far as I can tell in some of the places, but people are starting to come back. But I think one of the drawbacks from this is that so many young people are used to now watching mass on television, because so many young adults access content through video streaming and things like that now. So what do you think that churches can do, parishes can do to better minister to young adults? I mean, I think even before coronavirus, there was not an emphasis really consistently among parishes about ministering to young adults, because you have kind of first reconciliation and then first communion, and then you have kind of like youth group, and then you have marriage prep. Like, well, hold on, there's this kind of whole group in the middle here. These young adults, I mean, we kind of throw them out there when they graduate from high school, and then I guess the Newman Center will take care of them at college and stuff. But at some point they're going to come back to the parish, and we need to have something available for them, for to meet the challenges, answer the questions that they have in their hearts, and to meet that deep longing and desire for Jesus. How can parishes be more effective?
Yeah, well, I can definitely attest to this because it feels very much a personal struggle that I also have felt, just wanting to find a parish that had a vibrant young adult atmosphere to it. I know that it seems like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it that young adults aren't showing up because they are either not active in their faith anymore, or is it because they don't feel that there is something for them there, that there isn't a sense of belonging, or is it from the other side? Does ministry need to ramp it up and keep trying to reach pools of young adults? And it's both. I wouldn't say that it's either one extreme or the other. It is a very transitional period of life. So continuing on in your 20s, some people are still finishing up college or going back to college, changing degrees. So there's a lot of like out of town, out of hometown, from your parish that goes on. But also I'd say that like there is a real sense where it's like you're just kind of awkward and don't really belong in either set of groups. Like you don't belong in the high school group any longer, but you're not in the group of the 30-plus-year-old like new families that are starting off. When you have a bunch of young adult singles, and singles obviously isn't just for when one is in one's 20s. But there is like a real sense of like, there isn't community from, there isn't like other young adults showing up at Mass. So the best solution that I've found for my own like young adult community needs has been finding parishes that tend to center around college and post-college communities. Thankfully, we have some of those out here in the city. And I think the biggest draw that has brought young adults isn't just having like lots of social events, because, well, those do bring people, but having like an element of service to them. Young adults are drawn, even if they're not like practicing in their faith. I've seen so many young adult Catholics come back to their faith through like serving the homeless, through other mission projects in the cities. Feeling like that there's a purpose to why we're here has brought a lot of people into wanting to come to those like weekly gatherings, or having like Bible studies, book studies that are a weekly basis, so that you're not just showing up once on a random calendar day and then never seeing those people again. Once you have that sense of like you're committed to being with those people, having those regular meetings, young adults then have that sense of belonging, like, oh, we can rely on each other to be there. It's important that you are there. So all of that is to say that young adults being brought back to the church is twofold. It's feeling like you belong and having that reoccurring community that starts to build up through coming frequently to outside of Mass activities, whether it's service or otherwise. And also having being intellectually challenged. That's something that a lot of young adults who want to stay Catholic, like, want to have reasons to believe. So having groups that discuss what does our faith believe, almost like an RCIA type discovery, has brought more young adults back to the church, back to the faith, and also non-Catholics into the church than I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. You're exactly right, especially with the challenge of atheism, right? Which presents itself as very intellectual. It says, well, for belief in God is for weak-minded people. They need an excuse or a crutch to get through life. They can't explain things, so they just kind of attribute it all to this God that's kind of out there somewhere. And no, we're a thinking church. That's one of the reasons I love being Catholic, is we're a thinking church. And so I think you're absolutely right, appealing to the intellectual strengths of our young people and not kind of talking down to them or talking past them, I think is a very important way to do that. Now, one thing that I think that's very interesting in looking at young adults today, and I have, two daughters that are young adults, 23 and 21, two of my daughters. One just graduated from college, and one is going to be in her senior year this next year. And I don't necessarily notice this amongst them, but in that age group, I'm seeing that a lot of young people, they have a tendency to compare themselves to other people. Instead of focusing on the gifts that they've been given, they want to compare themselves to other people. And I've never done that. I mean, I've had people that I've emulated, like when I was playing guitar, there were guitar players, oh, I wish I could play like that. But I never thought like, wow, I'm going to alter my identity to be more like that person, and kind of suppressing who I am, who the person that God created me to be. Do you see the same thing amongst young adults today?
I definitely do. And I think it relates very much to kind of that idea of FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. I know that a lot of people, make the direct correlation that FOMO is caused by a lot of social media, and I think that's true, but I think it runs deeper than the social media alone causing us to compare ourselves to others. I think that it's the entire way that society is going. I think it really starts with the school systems thinking that we have to be well-rounded individuals rather than focusing on what our gifts are. I mean, of course, it is a gift and a blessing to be educated and know how to, have your basic subjects down. But there comes a certain point where everyone is trying to be fit into this mold where you can do a little bit of everything. But that's not really how most of us are made. There are a few individuals out there who are like Renaissance individuals who are good at a little bit of everything. But mostly, this idea of, well, you're special, but also you have to be good at everything you do. And there's a great expectation on a lot of artificial goals. Like, for instance, I know that in my grandparents' generation, the assumption that you go to college is not as heavy as it is now. Or this idea of if you don't go to college and if you choose a different kind of career and after high school plan, that somehow that's like less successful. Like, we are very prone to worshiping success in this culture, and that starts in school. It's also found in friend groups. Success socially looks like being popular, and it also looks like having a great influence on people. Now there's a measurement that comes through social media called being an influencer. So if you're the one who sort of sets the trends and tells other people how it's going to be and what's cool or what's in and what's out, that somehow that makes you successful in life, that is the way to go. So I think there's a lot of anxiety that's created with these ideas that there's no ultimate place of belonging. And so because there's a discontentment with just being who you are, there is actually a striving towards being like someone else, this deadly kind of comparison that starts to run through our thinking. But that makes sense, right? The narrative that atheism tries to portray. If all truth is relative, then the best that we can try to do is just get along and be nice to each other rather than seek truth and love, and rather than a life of virtue being superior to a life of sin. The biggest anxiety, I think, the biggest fear of missing out that young adults tend to feel is living without ever having truly lived. And living can look like a lot of different things to people, whether it's getting to be a jet setter and do a lot of traveling and take your selfies in all your exotic destinations, or pursuing a high level degree, or being married by that certain age before it's so no longer socially acceptable and the pressure is heavy to get to that next chapter of life. So I think the anecdote to this very toxic fear of missing out is to stop living individualistically, or on the other extreme, a member of a cult, basically, a cult of personality, be it a cult of influencer, social media, bowing to the cult of worldly success, whether it be money or fame. So all these things go against the heart of the gospel, and that's why they cause so much pain. But to get back to the values of the gospel is the anecdote.
And how have you handled the FOMO in your own life? I mean, how have you battled the idea of comparison?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because being Catholic, even being Catholic my whole life, doesn't mean that suddenly immune to this idea of intense comparison. I know that for myself, one of the greatest battles I've struggled with is considering that my worth comes from who I am and not what I do. From wanting to please my parents and have a great deal of responsibility given to me in life, being seen as a responsible person. The logical extreme that you can start to fall into is perfectionism. So this perfectionism extended crazily enough even into prayer life, thinking that, I have to do a certain amount of spiritual exercises per week, or I have to check the boxes, in the sacraments department, or I have to make sure that I get into that good Catholic college in order to make something of my life or to please God. I didn't realize just how profoundly it had seeped into my thinking. And so the problem with this sort of thinking is that it starts to feel like we have to earn love, or I started to feel like I had to earn love from God, from my parents, and that in pride, really falling short of that, it's being less than perfect, whether it's grades or spiritual practices or keeping my parents happy or trying to become what I'd like to become in life. Any falling short of these goals, it's just like unacceptable or just an overwhelming feeling of shame. It's been actually very enlightening, like leading a high school small group of young women at my parish. They are very much devoted to their faith, and I can really relate because they too come from public school situations, and the things that they share with me about how hard it can be to live faith in a public school system is something that I went through too. So I love to be able to like empathize with that, say it's okay, keep going. But I definitely noticed that among Catholics. So this isn't just something that affects the world outside the church, the secular. This idea of earning love or being loved for one's own sake is like profoundly human. And I think if we realize that, there won't feel like as much of a divide, or there won't be as much resentment towards young adults, no matter their status in the church or whether they're starting to check out from their faith. This desire to be loved and to be assured that one is loved for one's own sake is oftentimes the very key to leading people back to the church or recategorizing the way that they see God and see themselves, because it takes grace and it takes prayer to be able to break out of these mindsets or projecting rather these ideas of God loving us only when we are good or something like that.
And how do you get past that thinking that I'm not good enough as I am? I mean, I'm thinking of young people in particular who have gone through some trauma, maybe divorce of their parents, maybe some abuse, maybe because they're identifying with their idols, like a rock star or an actress or something, who's promiscuous, and maybe they followed in that same path, but now they've come to realize, wait a minute, why am I not happy? Why am I not fulfilled? Why do I still feel the same way? I thought that if I did X, Y, Z, that things would change in my life, but it hasn't. What are some things that young people can do to kind of really begin to recognize their own identity, to move away from this toxic comparison mentality and really begin to appreciate the gifts that they have, to recognize those gifts and be able to develop those gifts so they can be confident in who they are and really start to become the person that God created them to be?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And to be honest, I would not lie and say that I feel that I myself have mastered this. So as I relate this very experience to other young adults, I always want to be open and honest and say, this is like just a struggle of what it means to be a human person. This is part of the fallen world that we don't know with absolute certainty in our hearts at every single moment of the day that we are loved and loved unconditionally. But that is the goal. That is what we have to strive for. And so even though it's so funny, it's just come up recently. I was actually composing a blog post about this where I think in my imagination, I considered that, one day when it's time for me to get ready to get married, I'm just going to feel confident. I'm going to feel like I've arrived. I'm an adult. I know who I am. I know where my life is going. And I'll finally feel like a grown-up. But this is something that is an ongoing battle for my heart, even in prayer, something that I turn to the Lord to ask him, like, Lord, help me to know that I am loved. And it's not just because I'll know how to necessarily magically poof, know how to be a good wife, or poof, have this instant knowledge of how I'd be a good mother someday. So it's a good place of humility to recognize that, because that way there's not too much of a wall that goes up between myself and maybe an adult who's really struggling even much more to know who they are, or perhaps identifying, as you said, with idols, that really there is a shared humanness in that. But I do know that above all, it goes back so deep. It really does, and it's so scriptural too. Just how much we are seeking to rest in the knowledge that we are unconditionally loved. Like Adam and Eve questioning whether God loved them and wanted them to be like himself. Right, the devil questions this line of thinking. The devil makes Adam and Eve question, well, are you really unconditionally loved? I thought God's trying to hold out on you. He doesn't want you to be like himself. And so doubting the way that God saw them, Adam and Eve were then able to make that next terrible jump to, well, maybe I am not loved for my own sake. Maybe I don't have that intrinsic worth. Because if God is holding out on me, can God really be trusted? And so this is the same struggle that Catholics, Christians, and non-Catholics deal with alike. This is something very intrinsic to being a person. Like, how do I know that I am loved for my own sake? It's more than head knowledge, than knowing the catechism frontwards and backwards. But it starts with knowledge, obviously, of God and the faith and the gospel. But it is also a heart knowledge, something that I know always increases for me when I'm in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and starts to decrease the more I just get stuck in my own thinking or haven't prayed, really prayed in a while. But to ask young adults and to share with them this experience of, well, what does it mean to be a human person? And do you think that we would really be human if we didn't have these core desires? But if so, what do these core desires about wanting to be unconditionally loved, about wanting to be accepted for who we are and not what we do, tell us about the nature of this love that we must be hungering after? Because it doesn't seem that this love has an answer in this world alone. There's no sort of solution. There's no one organization or club or, style that could give you this sense of being unconditionally loved. It's only Christ in the Eucharist. It's only Christ in the church that gives this sense. But it's always on a spectrum. We're always trying to grow in greater awareness of this love. But I think experiencing and hearing about other people's conversion stories, other people's witness, and hearing about how Christ makes all the difference, and only Christ can give us that sense of being worthy and chosen and loved, not for anything that we do, but for who we are, becomes so relatable, whether someone's conversion story sounds similar to your own or not.
Yeah, I think that's really important because as you were thinking, I was because you're preparing to get married, right? And I know there's other young people who are discerning religious life. And the thing about both those vocations is that you really have to give yourself away in love. So if you don't understand how you are unconditionally loved, you can't give what you don't have yourself, right? That's like if someone asks you, oh, can I have $20? And you open your wallet, there's nothing in there. I can't give you $20 because I ain't got $20, right? So you can't give what you don't have yourself. So I think what you said was absolutely critically important, especially for young people who are discerning a possible vocation to marriage or to priesthood or to religious life, to recognize that in order to, I think, to I don't want to say be successful, but to really fully live that vocation, that vocational call, is that you have to understand yourself, who you are in God, what how you experience God's love, and be willing to share that love with others. I think that's and that's what marriage is. I mean, you're completely committing yourself in love to the person, and that person give themselves back to you totally, completely, and unconditionally, in anticipation of the wedding feast of heaven. Right. So I mean, that's what you said, was, I think, is extremely, extremely important. Um, and I know that this voice of comparison and stuff leads people away from the church. Um, and also causes fear and anxiety, as we talked about before. So what are some ways that people can deal with the anxiety and the fear? What are some sources that people can turn to handle those fears and handle those anxieties? Well, you said Eucharistic adoration. That's my number one go-to, but what are some other things that young people can do?
For sure, for sure. And just to add one final addition to that point that you made, yeah, it might sound arrogant at first to consider, well, I'm a gift. But no, that's exactly the truth of what God wants to reveal. Like, we were made to be persons, to be human persons, because in some way we reflect the image and likeness of God as three persons, as the Trinity. So it is an immense gift to be a person, because it means that you can possess yourself in order to give yourself away as a gift. And that is the highest act of love, is to be able to give the gift of yourself away. There's nothing more priceless than that. So for the vocation of priesthood or religious life, or for the vocation of marriage. So I think, as you were mentioning, this anxiety, I think ultimately comes from a place of not recognizing one's worth. I know that's not the first time I've iterated this in today's talk, but it is huge. So this sense of worth and fluctuating sometimes, whether we consider ourselves to be a gift or very much not a gift, very much the opposite. These things have obviously a huge help with Eucharistic adoration. Also, I feel like learning about the lives of the saints has been big for me. It can be easy enough to just look at the saints from a glance, and think of them as larger than life and perfect. But you start to read saints' biographies or autobiographies, their humanness comes across so strongly. I remember reading a excerpt from a letter between Saint Louis and Zélie Martin, the parents of Saint Therese, and it's really hilarious, actually. Saint Zélie is just so anxious about getting all her chores and cooking and cleaning done before Louis just invited all these unexpected guests over to the house, and she's just feeling kind of annoyed with him at this point. She's writing it all down in a letter. And it's just glorious, because wow, this is just a real human family struggle. They are both still saints, but it doesn't mean that they, saints just walked on air or clouds or didn't, have real human experiences. I think it can be tempting to idealize the saints so much that we no longer imagine them to really be human. Well, that must just be something special about them, an immense grace, but they didn't go through what I did. And all across the board, there's so many different kinds and types of saints, so many different personalities, that their struggles were intense. Their battle with sin and their battle to see themselves as worthy is just as relevant as our own. So never to get too far from picking up a book and reading about a saint. I also think that community is so crucial, not just showing up for Mass and then filing out without seeing anyone or saying hello. We can do that to fulfill our Sunday obligation, but making an effort to socialize with people after Mass, going out with people, or inviting people over to one another's houses. This is just a beautiful practice anyways, but and also participating at daily Mass, getting to know and seeing who's there at daily Mass, even if it's just once or twice extra a week, really starts to make a difference. Being Catholic doesn't just feel like a thing that you're doing alone, or a thing that you can experience when you have your online Catholic groups, but it becomes real and present when you see those other people around you and you can talk to them. And finally, I also think that there is a great potential actually for the internet, that it should only be condemned, but that through, you can just be driving in your car and put on an excellent Catholic podcast, or you can, have the freedom that we do to put out wonderful content as well. So just having like nuggets of Catholic encouragement throughout one's day, throughout one's week, really starts to add up. And I guess I'd also like to add, just being in contact with one's parish priest is a huge blessing if one has the opportunity. And of course, different parishes can look like different things, and I know that COVID has really impacted that. But if you ever have the opportunity to go to like a parish event where your priest is present, if you ever have that chance to start to dialogue with him and experience your priest as your actual like shepherd of your soul, that is just a huge blessing. Even if your priest is busy and you just schedule an appointment with him once a month or something like that, or once every few months as his time permits, like leaning into the fatherly love of a priest can really end up, shaping our view of Christ, especially, those heroic, like unsung priests that are just like very holy and devoted to their parishioners. That has definitely been a huge blessing in being able to know like who I am and being reminded, having a reflection of the Father's love.
Yeah, excellent. Just great advice there. And one thing I want to make sure that I ask you about is as people start to come back to the sacraments and come back to community, there's definitely fear out there. My daughter graduated from high school not too long ago, and we decided to go out to ice cream, with the parents of a friend of hers, a classmate of hers. So we were in, so the gal arrived first, and her parents came a little bit later and joined us in the line, the ice cream line. And, we greeted them, and then the parents left. And we thought, oh, okay, maybe they have something else. So there's a younger sibling at home or something like that. But what the daughter told us is that the parents were still afraid, to be around people, because because people have been isolated for so long because of COVID. I think a lot of people have lost a sense of community. They're almost afraid to be around people now, even though they say, well, okay, now in some cases you don't have to wear a mask when you go to the store or when you go to church, or when you do, and people are still wearing them, or they're still scared to be around people. They're still afraid of community. How can we begin to really recover that, within the context of love overcoming fear, as John tells us in his first letter?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is such a disturbing phenomenon is the word I choose for it, that this is happening still, because at least when you have your faith, if you have Christ in the center of your lives, and all of us, of course, are always striving towards that, even for Catholic, we can lose sight of that at times, but if you truly believe, there is nothing to fear. Like even suffering itself, even death, sickness, like God is in control. And so people just should not live from a place of fear, even though you can choose to do so. But what a restricted, life that would be, that it doesn't portray the fullness of joy that we have in the gospel, this abandonment to Christ, to whatever he wants for our lives, whether that is sickness or health, whether, whatever crosses Christ intends for us, it's ours to embrace. When you could start to, pull on so many other fears in life, like every time you get into your car, are you going to arrive safely at your destination, or are you perhaps, does God will that something's going to happen today, or permit it rather, not that God desires for us to have pain and suffering, but these things serve to give him glory. So to start to get back into that community life is so crucial, because without community, a society falls apart, and it can fall apart so quickly too. we need the Catholic Church to be a beacon of light and hope in that. And so Catholics, I strongly believe, should be the first ones to show that, like, no, there is no fear when you have God. Like, there is nothing that we truly have to be afraid of at the end of the day. Because if we truly believe, if we have recourse to prayer, and if we have even the gift of fasting as well, like, things can always change. Sicknesses can be healed if God were to give them to us, or if we are meant to suffer with a sickness, it's because it'll serve a greater purpose for glory. So all of that is to say that I think we just need to make more an effort, not trying to just please everyone, or trying not to hurt some people's feelings because they might be afraid. We need to encourage. We need to encourage people to come back together, to gather, to share life together, because this ultimately is what makes us more human. To hide away in fear is to shrink, not only in love, but in knowledge of who we are and what this life is for. And part of this life is getting to heaven with the help of one another.
Excellent. Very beautifully said. Well said. And so as we kind of just wrap up our time together here, what's going on with your apostle? I know you're still posting videos on your YouTube channel. I know you're still blogging. Just keep folks up to date on what's going on with you right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So right now I am in progress to get some book manuscripts together and hopefully start publishing again very soon. But in the meantime, as I continue to make videos, if any of these have helped you, if they've helped young adults that you know or your teens, I encourage you to become a supporter on my Patreon page. So right now I just have one simple tier on there, just to donate if you have felt inspired or helped. So that can be found by going to my homepage website, hannahballo.com, and just clicking on that little red button. It's greatly appreciated, especially as I am very soon to starting a new family. I'm getting married this October to my wonderful fiance, Kirk. Very excited for that.
Oh, excellent. And again, why don't you give us your website once again, where people can go and get more information about you if they want to book you to speak in a parish. I know a lot of parishes are opening up in the fall now. And are looking for good speakers, especially, if they listen to this, say, you know what, really need to do something for our young adults in the parish. I think a great thing to do is to have you come out and talk to them, right? Give a series of talks at maybe and since you're at the parish, might as well go to the local high school and talk to them as well. So give us your website and how people can book you for events.
Yeah, absolutely. So this talk today, or what we've discussed, is from a talk called "Who Am I and How Do I Find Love?" So there's a description of the full talk, talking about identity and human anthropology, confusion, and self-worth. And so this can be found on hannahballo.com, HANNAHBALLO. And under the section that says Book Hannah to Speak, there's like a full catalog of a bunch of different topics, actually. They're ever expanding. If you ever have a topic that I don't have listed that you'd be interested in hearing about, feel free to shoot me an email, which is at the bottom of the webpage, and we can dialogue about that. I'd be very happy to come speak and share.
Oh, excellent. That's so wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today, Hannah. It's great to have you on again, and I'm sure we'll have you on again in not too distant future. And so please know that you definitely continue to have my support, and I will continue to pray that God blesses the work that you're doing in his vineyard, because we definitely need more voices like yours in our culture today, for sure.
Thank you so much for having me on, Harold. It's been a great joy. Thank you for all that you do. Your incredible talks.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. And thank all of you for joining us on the Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar. I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care, my friends, and may God bless you abundantly.
Thank you for watching Deacon Harold's Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar. Tune in next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for more.